Today, we're going to cover a big list of actionable tips to help you protect your SEO performance during website redesigns. So these tips come to you via best practices from my personal experience working in SEO since 2009 and recommendations from the search engines themselves. We'll highlight what the most important SEO areas are during website redesigns, what you want from each of these areas, and the most common mistakes that people tend to make. But before we jump right in, you need to know now that SEO during website redesigns is really quite complex. And there's a lot more that we need to think about that can be discussed in this one video. So accompanying this, you will find a companion guide. In that companion guide, there's tons of helpful resources and how-tos to give you additional coverage. Let's get started. When you redesign your site, it's a time of great change. Some of those changes are going to have a big impact on SEO and some aren't. Of all the different types of changes, there are 6 areas that matter most that will really move the needle. They are changes to your code, changes to your content, changes to your information architecture, changes to URLs, changes to internal linking, and last, changes to user experience. Let's talk about each of these areas and what to look out for. Then we'll go into the common mistakes. Right, so item number 1, changes to your code. In the code of your future website, particular tags are required to tell search engines what is on each page. For example, this is a heading, this is a paragraph, this is a subheading, this is a table, this is a list, and so on. Search engines rely on the meaning communicated by code to determine what your pages are about. Now, if the people who are coding your new site are not using the correct tags, they're not going to communicate the correct meaning. And as a result, search engines are going to struggle to figure out what your pages are about. And this problem could affect every page of your site if there's an error at the template level. So when you're managing changes to your code during a website redesign, here's what you want: code with meaning, or put another way, semantic HTML. For each page of your future site, you want code elements like meta titles and descriptions, headings, paragraphs, lists, tables, and so on, all to be defined and used correctly. Now, this is really important if you're thinking about using a CMS or a content management system. You want to make sure that these elements are all really easy to edit. If they're not, you could find yourself locked in to a suboptimal SEO foundation. Also, please do avoid, or at least consider carefully, using any kinds of technologies that search engines have trouble seeing. Search engines are best at processing plain text. And while they're making improvements in things like images and videos and other formats, I wouldn't rely on their ability in these areas if you're thinking about putting really important content you want to do well in there. Okay, now let's talk about changes to content. Item number 2. So you already know that content plays a huge role in SEO. Now, during a website redesign, content will often get rewritten, get deleted, get moved, or get transferred to a new file format like PDF or video. If you are planning on making big changes to your content like this, it's really important to keep the following criteria in mind. These are kind of key ideas for ensuring that your content will be effective from an SEO perspective. The first criteria is that your content must remain relevant to how your target audience search. The second piece of criteria is that your content must be accessible to the search engine. It can't be locked behind a form or some other gateway that requires user input, because the search engine isn't going to be able to get through that. Third, it must be unique by being an independently valuable resource online, bringing something new to the table. And fourth, it has to satisfy the human goal of searching. That means giving the person what they're looking for, whether that's an answer, a solution, or a particular piece of information. For these reasons, any changes to content need to be carefully considered and evaluated against each of these criteria on a page-by-page basis. Item number 3, changes to information architecture. If you are planning on reorganizing where your pages and your content will live in your website redesign, you will be treading into the realm of information architecture. When describing information architecture, or IA, many people use the filing cabinet analogy. When you open up a filing cabinet, If everything has just been thrown in there, it's a chaotic mess. So if you're planning on adopting a new IA during your website redesign, here's what to go for. First, a logical and intuitive structure that reflects how people search for information. Now, to describe this in practice, it's probably best for you to pop open a major travel site of your choosing. Have a look at the way that they will have organized their flights, their hotels, their car hire, their holidays, and their tours. Chances are you're going to see an information architecture that's organized to reflect exactly how people search. For example, if they have a domestic flight section, it could have pages for flights to Melbourne, flights to Perth, flights to Adelaide. If they have an international flight section, could have flights to London, flights to Paris, and so on. So they've built their information architecture to maximize the relevance of all of these different pages to how people search, which also helps users find what they're looking for. Next up, item number 4, changes to URLs. Changing URLs is a really, really, really big deal. So if there was just one thing that can totally destroy a website's SEO during a redesign, it is a botched URL transition. Let's imagine a worst case scenario for a moment. A site with an existing URL structure that has been around for quite some time and ranking well in search engines suddenly swaps to a totally new URL structure during a website redesign. What happens? Well, the first thing is that any users who have bookmarked those old URLs will now automatically land on a 404 file not found error if they try to access those bookmarks, because those URLs no longer exist. Second, search engines who have a very clear idea about the different pages of the site and where they are located and what they're relevant to now have to do a complete reset to relearn this new URL structure. And third, if the search engine was ranking those old URLs, those rankings are now gone. The final result? Tons of lost traffic and lost conversions from organic search. Users encountering 404 and file not found errors, which is a pretty damaging user experience. And ultimately, because it will need to be fixed, a lot of cost in time, energy, and resource. So let's move on to how you can protect yourself from this ever happening to you. First, make sure that if you are going to use a new URL structure, you keep the following criteria in mind. Your new URLs should be short, they should be human-friendly, so ideally not containing random strings of letters and numbers. URLs should contain keywords that describe what the page is about. I do not mean kind of stuff keywords into the URL, but rather use them in a natural, elegant manner. Okay, so once you've done that, now it's time to get to the really important bit, which is put redirects in place. For example, let's imagine that you have a page on your old site called /oldpage, and that will no longer exist. Instead, you've got a new URL /newpage. A redirect will automatically forward anyone who tries to visit that old URL and will take them to the new URL. And these redirects need to be set live immediately after the new website launches. It's really, really, really important to have a plan for the redirects in place, discussing them with your web developer long before launch day. So as soon as that new site goes live, the redirects can go live with it. Now, let's talk about item number 5, changes to internal linking. Internal links perform a few vital functions. First, they help users navigate your site, but they also help search engines. They help search engines to discover your content. And third, they provide search engines with indicators of page importance. The idea being that if a page has lots of incoming links pointing to it, it must be an important page. During your website redesign, a good approach to thinking about internal linking is one that first uses highly visible locations like your navigation menu and your footer to link to your most important pages. Uses keywords in link anchor text being the clickable part of the link to signal what the page being linked to is about. Third, great internal linking enables all of your pages to be found with just a few clicks from the homepage. Ideally, if you can, 2 to 3 clicks from the homepage should enable people to find pretty much all the content on your site. And now for item number 6, changes to user experience. In 2015, SEO took a huge leap forward. Google announced RankBrain, an artificial intelligence system designed to help guide its ranking algorithm. Kind of in summary, RankBrain aims to determine the intent behind a search. And next, figuring out what pages are the best results for those queries, especially in scenarios where the query has never been seen before. So among the many things that RankBrain measures, the 2 that stand out in particular are which search results get clicked on the most versus competing pages. And once a person has clicked through to a particular result, do they stay and engage? So is the dwell time and the signals of a satisfied user experience being met? Or does that individual immediately bounce back to the search results? This data, which in many ways provides clues about the user experience of that site, is then used to tune search results in pretty much real time, lifting up those pages that seem to provide a superior experience and lowering those results that do not. When you're thinking about your future website's user experience and planning on optimizing for RankBrain, keep this in mind. First, as we talked about a little bit earlier, rigorously evaluate your content and how it matches to the search engines you want it to rank for. Second, your title tags and your meta descriptions, which often appear in search results as the clickable text and the description, they need to be written in such a way that makes them compellingly clickable so that they stand out and entice that searcher to choose clicking on you versus everything else on that page. Next, make sure that if there are any bugs on your site, especially if they happen to be on mobile or tablet, that they get addressed, because bugs can easily lead to bounces. And lastly, be very conscious of the role of design and speed. Design communicates subconsciously, I think, competence and professionalism, and everybody likes a fast website. Cool, now let's move on and talk about the most common and painful mistakes that people make with SEO during the website redesign process, so that you know what to watch out for and you can avoid them. Most common mistake number 1, not respecting the speed at which redirects need to be put in place. As soon as your new site goes live, those redirects need to go live as well. You do not want Google visiting your new site, looking for URLs that no longer exist, and getting 404, file not found, file not found, file not found again and again and again. That sends a very negative signal. It's like making a bad first impression for your new website. For that reason, I can't stress this enough. Before the new website goes live, several conversations and planning sessions need to happen with your developers so that they know that as soon as the new website is up and running, the redirects need to be happening right then and there as well. Most common mistake number 2, accidentally blocking the new site from search engines. You might be wondering how in the world could the new site be blocked from search engines, and it's actually a really simple thing that can happen, that can go wrong. So when you're developing a new site and you have it in a staging environment, you do not want that staging site appearing in search results. So a special directive will be placed that tells search engines that they cannot access the staging site if for whatever reason they find it. That directive is stored in a file called the Robots.txt. The Robots.txt file tells the search engine where it can go. And because this is a staging site, you don't want it popping up in search results, so that robots.txt file is going to say don't go anywhere. You're disallowed from viewing the site. So here's where the problem happens. On launch day, when that staging site gets copied to become the real site, that staging robots.txt, which was blocking everything, becomes the real robots.txt and still blocks everything. So this one file going live will block search engines from visiting your newly redesigned site. So how do you protect yourself from this? Have a conversation with your web developer and say, make sure please not to send the staging robots.txt file live when we do the launch. And then once the launch happens, maybe remind your developer, hey, would you mind checking on that robots.txt file to making sure that search engines can index our new site? Thank you. And last up here, most common mistake number 3, not thinking about SEO until the last minute. It's so true that there's a lack of awareness about how much SEO work is required to successfully transition a site through a time of major change, like a website redesign. Because of this, amongst all the other things that happen during website redesigns, you can see how easy it would be for SEO to kind of be overlooked for a little while as other priorities take their place, and then sort of 2 weeks before launch, or even a week before launch, somebody say, okay, whoa, we need to look into SEO now. The difficulty with this is that lots of little and very important decisions have already been made. And an SEO person wasn't there to consult on whether those were the right decisions or really disastrous decisions, which makes a week or two out from launch really tricky, because you're usually going to be faced with a scenario where either you launch something that's less than ideal, or you extend the deadlines, something that nobody likes, and go back and do some rework to fix it. I realize that these two aren't really the most appealing options, but they are better than the third option, which is not doing anything at all and launching a really broken website that's going to perform terribly, that then requires a bunch of SEO rework to fix. So it's better to be late than never. Well, there we have it. The most important areas to focus on for SEO during a website redesign, and the most common mistakes. Now, I hope these help with all of the future website redesigns that you have in the future, so that they run smoothly, so that they actually benefit your rankings, your traffic, your conversions from organic search for now and long into the future. But just again, before we sign out, remember that there is more to talk about on this topic. We can't cover everything here. Please do check out the companion guide, which you will find at reefdigital.com.au/blog, and then we'll have it linked to you from there. It has tons of extra info, tutorials, videos, you name it. And last, if you want more videos like this, as soon as they're available, you know what to do. Please become a subscriber. With all of that being said, thank you so much for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.